Here's the scenario. You've just finished your lunch break and you're back in the office building, you're walking down a corridor and you turn right. You place your hand on the door handle. It's a door to a meeting room. Inside that room that you're about to enter are 10 of your colleagues seated around a meeting table. You walk into the room, you find your chair and you sit down. As you're getting comfortable, you look down and you notice that you've spilt sauce all over your pants. What are the thoughts that go through your mind at that point? That's what we're going to discuss today. Welcome back. This is LOTED. We are learning one thing every day. My name's Wayne and I run Learn Well Books. We're an international best-selling book publishing house. We come across some amazing information in the course of our work because we publish books in the 5 most important areas of life: relationships, health, money, productivity, and mindset. Today, we're focusing on the content of one of the books that we've recently published, which is called End Your Shyness and Social Anxiety. During the course of the research that we did for this book, we discovered a lot, but one of the most startling statistics came from a study that was done in 2020 that shows 36% of the global population experience social anxiety. It's my belief that a large part of social anxiety relies on our perception. And if we can shift our perception, we can eradicate our social anxiety. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 pieces of information that are purely designed to shift your perception about what other people are thinking so that you don't experience enhanced level of social anxiety that get in the way of you being who you truly are. At the end of this video, I'm going to share 3 things with you that you become free to do once you've taken care of social anxiety. Okay, perspective shifting point number 1. This comes from a study in 2000 done by psychologist Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University. Back then, Barry Manilow was a bit of a dag. You wouldn't wear a Barry Manilow t-shirt because you'd be a bit of a dag. So what Gilovich decided to do was to take a student and say, hey, would you help me with an experiment that I'm conducting? The student says, yeah. So Gilovich gives the student a Barry Manilow t-shirt to put on before he goes into a lecture theatre. But before the student goes into the lecture theatre, Gilovich says, tell me something, how many of the students inside that lecture theatre do you think will notice that you're wearing a Barry Manilow t-shirt? The student said, at least 50. So the student thought that at least half of the people in the room would at least just notice that he had the shirt on. The student walks in, takes his seat, and then Gilovich says to the entire lecture theatre, all right guys, we're conducting a little research here. Put your hands up if you noticed that t-shirt that that guy's wearing over there. Now the student wearing the t-shirt made the initial assessment that at least half the room would notice. Well, the truth is only 23% of the room even noticed the t-shirt. This experiment resulted in what's known as the spotlight effect, which is the gap between what we think people notice and what they actually notice. And that gap is enormous. This concept reveals something crucial. What we notice is not the same as what other people notice. What we notice is quite individual and scattered, but we use that to generalize what we think other people have noticed. We just assume that they've all noticed the same thing. Just as what comes to our attention is individualized and rather scattered, the same is true for everyone else. So even though you might have noticed the sauce on your pants, you would assume that everyone did, but chances are others haven't. Now for perspective shifting point number 2. The spotlight effect exists because of cognitive bias. You're with yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are the main character in your life. And you have the tendency to think that you're the main character in other people's lives and thoughts as well. But that's just not the case. You're barely a supporting character in their daily narrative. Here's the practical ratio that helps clarify this. You spend approximately 95% of your time thinking about yourself, your appearance, performance, goals, relationships, concerns, memories, plans, and so on. Meanwhile, everyone else is doing the same thing. They've got about 5% of their capacity left to think about you. It's bold of you to assume that they're doing a lot of that. There's a quote that I've often relied on when I've succumbed to feelings of social anxiety, and it's by a guy called Oscar Wilde. He said, you'd care far less about what people thought of you if you realized how rarely they did. Here is the 3rd perspective shifting point. It's something called the actor-observer asymmetry. As you play the role of actor in your life, you have full access to everything going on for you. Meanwhile, others are just observers. And there's a deep asymmetry or difference between those two roles. Let's take an example. Let's say you step onto a stage and you're about to give a presentation. And during that presentation, you fumble, you forget your script, you lose your place. You've got unlimited access to all of your own thoughts at that point. Your thoughts about the preparation you've done, the anxiety that you're feeling, the embarrassment that's starting to flood your body, and the rumination that stays with you afterwards. Meanwhile, anyone in the audience sees a person on stage that paused awkwardly, lost their place for a moment, but then carried on. Your perspective could be monumental, whereas the observer's perspective could be just quite trivial, if anything at all. Let's make it a bit more personal. Think back to high school for a moment and see if you can remember any moment that wasn't truly spectacular, that you can remember any classmate, friend, or anyone else at school doing something horribly embarrassing that you can still remember today. If you're anything like me, that's very hard to do. But if you're anything like me, it'd be very easy to think of something that has caused you embarrassment at high school that you still remember. And that just demonstrates that you have the spotlight effect, egocentric bias, and the actor-observer asymmetry at play in your life as much as anyone else's. I find it deeply comforting to simply rely on the fact that people are not paying anywhere near as much attention to me as I sometimes think they are. And what that allows me to do is three things, amongst others, but three really important things. It allows me to make mistakes without catastrophizing the outcome. I can trip over, I can spit while I'm talking, I can lose my train of thought, and no one cares except for me. And when I realize that no one else cares, I don't need to catastrophize any potential negative outcomes. It also allows us to take more social risks. We can introduce ourselves to people that we'd love to talk to. We can ask someone on a date. We can do things that are a proper expression of who we are, rather than conforming to a safe version of ourselves that won't cause any perceived negative outcomes. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, if we shift our perspective to a much more practically realistic one, where we understand that 95% of the attention of most people is going towards themselves, we understand that there's a huge difference between our own internal thoughts and concerns and the observations that other people are making, and just the number of people that are oblivious to what we're doing because they're so occupied by what they're doing. When we realize all of that, we are able to say what's truly on our mind without the fear of negative repercussions. Until we become free to say what we think and to express ourselves fully, we're just a contorted version of ourselves designed to keep us safe. But what are we keeping ourselves safe from? Attention that no one's actually giving us? Concerns that no one really has? All we're doing is limiting the true exposure of ourselves to the world. And I don't believe that that's the right way to live. When we are a true expression of ourselves, then we get to connect with people who appreciate us for who we truly are. And those connections are far more authentic than the ones we make when we're presenting a contrived version of ourselves that's just designed to please others. As you contemplate these three perspective shifting points, I truly hope that it liberates some part of your character that then has the freedom to express itself to the world, because the world wants to see you. Thank you so much for watching. This is Low Ted. We know that if we want to be interesting, we've got to stay interested. That's why we learn one thing every day. I'll see you tomorrow.